This is the Gutsy Health Podcast with Janique and Tristan Roney. Hey, you guys, welcome back to the Gutsy Health Podcast.
Welcome. We have a really, really great interview today. You're going to love this one.
I'm really excited for this, actually. Our guest today is Nina Boyce, and she is a women's hormone expert. And I know so many of our followers, people on Instagram, and people that listen to our podcast have hormonal issues. I mean, if you live in today's age, you have hormonal issues because we are so surrounded by things that disrupt our endocrine systems.
And also, if you're a guy that listens to our show, even if there aren't a lot of you, don't check out now. Keep listening to this because this, I believe, is so important to understand, even if you are not a woman, because you probably interact with women. You may have some that you even live with, and understanding what's happening for them will make things so much easier for you to understand what's going on, and it'll make it easier for you to support them and help them.
So, on that note, Nina, thank you so much for your time today. Please, can you introduce yourself to the listeners and tell us your story?
Hi. Well, thank you guys so much for having me on the show. I'm so honored to be here, and you guys are obviously such a perfect fit for everything that I believe in and everything you're preaching here on the podcast. So I'm so happy to be here. Well, like you mentioned, my name is Nina Boyce, and I'm a women's hormone coach and also podcaster. And I really got into this line of work after struggling with my own hormones and anxiety from kind of a young age. I always struggled with anxiety, but it wasn't until really like my college years that it started to affect my life and get worse.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was just a lot, you know, in college, for example, you're not eating the way you should be eating.
Exactly.
That's pretty much a given.
And you're stressed out of your mind too.
Right. Yeah. You have so much going on.
Mm-hmm.
And I always was a person that was just on the go. Like I said, even when I was younger, I had a brother with severe special needs. So I feel like everything in my life was just heightened a little bit. You know, I lived in that fight or flight mode. I was just used to that. But in college, you know, you're taking classes, you're not eating well. I started taking birth control at that time, which little did I know was affecting my body in ways that I would soon later find out, you know, years down the road.
Yes.
But I kind of just pushed through all of it, and I was ignoring the signs that I was getting chronic headaches all the time. And, you know, I was having these bouts of anxiety that were more severe than I'd ever experienced before, but I kept pushing through.
Yes.
And, you know, I graduated school. I started my full-time job. I was a music teacher, a middle school choir director. I worked at 2 buildings. So I taught over 550 kids. I just wasn't slowing down, you know,
It just kept going and going, kept revving up.
Exactly. Kept going. I was recently engaged. I was getting my master's degree, and I was planning this trip for my kids to go to Carnegie Hall and sing in New York City. And I remember at this time, I mean, I was running on, I think like granola bars and Trenta iced coffees. That was just my life, you know?
Yep.
But I felt like almost like Superwoman in a way. Like, oh, look at me. Like, I can just keep going. Look at all the stuff I'm doing. But it wasn't until all of those things kind of slowed down that my anxiety it spiked to uncontrollable levels. I had my first panic attack. My face started breaking out. I was getting cystic acne. I had stopped the pill because I thought that was what was causing the issues, and I'm sure it wasn't helping. Yeah. But my period then was all over the place. I was spotting inconsistently. I had terrible menstrual cramps, and I just knew that something was going on underneath the surface. I needed help. Yeah. So, of course, I went to my doctors.
Yes.
But
thinking they had the answers.
Didn't really get the answers I was looking for, because my physician just said, well, you know, everything's fine with your blood work. I think let's just put you on Lexapro. And if you're nervous and have anxiety about taking the Lexapro, which I did, we'll put you on Xanax to help with that. And so I just was like, not feeling those answers.
So they basically said, this sounds like a mental health thing. We're going to give you some medication to help you relax and not be depressed.
Right. Exactly. When, you know, sometimes when I think back on it, I'm like, maybe it would have been nice to just sort of give myself a little bit relief if I would have taken that route. But in the end, it wasn't the solution, you know,
Right.
I needed to go deeper than that.
It was a Band-Aid. And
Exactly.
And oftentimes, like, even when it comes to hormone issues, did they even think it was a hormone thing at all? Like, were they just like, no, this is just like, okay. So they weren't even looking at hormones, but like typically when you say I have a hormone issue, the answer is, well, let's just put you on birth control. Right?
Absolutely. Because then I went to my gynecologist and because I asked my doctor, my physician, I said, can I get my hormones tested? I feel like it's something to do with my hormones.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, we don't really do that here, but you can ask your gynecologist. And when I went in, I had taken like a saliva test too at that point.
Yeah.
And I brought in my saliva test. I was like, I know that I'm struggling with like low progesterone and like high estrogen, what's going on? And she was just like, well, those can kind of be inaccurate and we don't need to test your hormones. Let's just put you on birth control.
Oh,
you know,
my
it was just
gosh.
it was very much shut down.
You're kidding. So they wouldn't even look deeper for you. They were
No.
just saying,
Mm-mm.
nope, the Band-Aid solution is birth control because that fixes everything. How many
Yeah.
years had you been on birth control when you went off of it?
So I got on birth control my freshman year of college, and then I stayed on that all 4 years. I think it was 6 or 7 years on birth control,
Okay.
but I was not on and off, but I tried a lot of different types of birth control. So I would try the mini pill because I felt like maybe the estrogen was affecting all of my mood swings and the weight gain I was experiencing. And then I tried the NuvaRing. And so I kept like playing around with different brands because I thought it was me that was the, you know, it's like, it has to be the birth control. It's a different type. Maybe that will work, but nothing ever worked.
Yes. And so, okay, so you go to your gynecologist and he says, no, we don't really do blood work.
No. Oh yeah.
Who is it? It was your gynecologist. Is that correct?
Yeah. So my family doctor was the one that told me not that they don't really do blood work for hormones.
Okay.
So then to go to the gynecologist, and my gynecologist just kind of shut it down and didn't think it was necessary.
So where did you go from there?
So that's when I decided to take all of this into my own hands, and I started Googling. That's really where it began for me, like Googling nutrition for anxiety.
Yeah.
And I will say I was on Pinterest. I remember this so vividly. And it was like, eat more bananas or eat more dark chocolate for magnesium, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And if you're just going to eat a banana or dark chocolate, that's not going to just, you know, make your anxiety miraculously go away. But that was kind of the start for me. Mm-hmm. And I was on the diet train, but not for weight loss. Yeah. I was like, oh, I'm paleo now because this is going to get rid of my anxiety and my hormone issues. Right. I'm keto now and I'm vegan, you know? So I tried all of these different diets. Mm-hmm. But what it came down to was just changing to a whole foods based diet and reducing my inflammation, that I slowly, like the veil started to lift. And then I was able to, then I was like doing yoga and meditation. So it was kind of a slow process of just getting into the holistic health world, really.
Yeah. Well, because it's such a daunting world because there's so much information, and we've spoken about this before on other podcasts where no one can agree on like the solution. But what people fail to recognize is there's no one solution for every person other than eat more veggies, eat more healthy fats. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like cut out sugar, you know? And so we're all like debating each other on the nitty gritty when we're not taking into account everyone's individual biochemical needs.
Well, and I think the other thing that goes into that is that it's a holistic approach. Mm-hmm. Like you said, Nina, you weren't just changing your diet. You were also making some big lifestyle changes by getting into the meditation and the yoga and really kind of taking control of every aspect of your life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, okay.
No, absolutely.
So you, at this point, you're changing your nutrition, your stress, because you had the cystic acne, you had the anxiety and the panic attacks. How long did it take you to feel like you had arrived?
You know, as soon as I started, and this is probably 4.5 years ago now, but as soon as I started really changing the diet and also actively reducing my stress response. So getting my body out of the sympathetic state, you know, and making sure I was getting into that rest and digest, I started to feel, like I said, that veil lift, like immediate changes. Yeah. Now, my body wasn't where it is today, but I had the ability then to think more clearly. My hormones and my anxiety were starting to balance itself out so that I was able to, get up and do the things I wanted to do. Yes. I started to feel better pretty quickly with that.
That's amazing.
But even now, 4.5 years later, I'm still working on things like you guys mentioned. Yes. It's not just about nutrition. I've been eating well for a very long time now, but now it's kind of looking into other things that are going on with me, like maybe some nutrient deficiencies, and maybe there's always things that can be done. Yes. But I think when you change your diet and you reduce your stress response, you'll start to feel better pretty quickly.
And I love that you mentioned that, because I want listeners to really understand, like, healing is a constant journey. You know what I mean? Like you're not going to embark on it on day one and in 7 days you're a new person. Like you said, the veil will start lifting, the fog, the extremes of like extreme fatigue and extreme anxiety. But a lot of people will say, hey, I've been on this menu plan now for, a few weeks and I'm still having hormonal issues. Like, how long, like, what can I do? And I'm like, you're doing it. Like, but you just have to wait. You have to let the body kick in and heal itself. It can do that, but it has to do that on its own timeline. Like, everything works in like a synchronicity, but the body synchronicity is slow. It's kind of like Mother Nature, right? Like, a flower doesn't grow overnight. It takes several weeks, And so, so I really want listeners to understand that this is a constant learning journey. You will start to feel better, but it just takes some time. So, go ahead.
I just want to say this too. When it comes to your hormones specifically, you need to give yourself, depending on what you're struggling with, at least 3 months for something. Like if you're dealing with PMS or menstrual cramping, I mean, number one, you got to give yourself a full cycle to get things going. But 3 months is kind of like that benchmark to see if you're starting to see some changes. Yes. And then for some people, like even like say you're dealing with amenorrhea and you haven't had a period, giving your body like 3 to 6 months and even longer sometimes is something you just got to expect.
I totally agree with that. Actually, we just told one of our members that last night. I was messaging her because she wanted to detox estrogen really fast. And I'm like, you know what? You've just started healing. Let's give it. And I said 3 months. I'm like, give it 3 months. Like, and if nothing is moving, then we'll get more aggressive. But I feel like nutrition, like just changing the fundamentals is like 90% of the work. Don't you think?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's the first step I start with my clients. It's the first thing I did for myself. And then I do pair it with the mental stuff as well, because, the way, if you're negatively talking down to yourself or you're really thinking black and white when it comes to food, and it's just, you can cause more stress on the body just by the way that you're thinking. So it's really pairing both of those. But the easiest first step is changing your nutrition.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I totally agree with that. So tell us a little bit more about what you do now, because you mentioned the coaching, and I want other listeners to know what it is that you do and how you help other people in this space now, because it took you probably several years to figure it out because doctors weren't helping you with that. So you did the research, you healed yourself, and then what did you do?
So then I decided, because I could not stop talking about this. Once you start feeling better, you have to share with everybody. Yep. So the first thing I did was I started a podcast, as you guys, I'm sure, did too, while you started this show. But I started a podcast.
And what's the name of that podcast? So everyone can.
So right now, I recently rebranded. So right now it's Healing Hormones, and I've taken the show solo, and I talk solely about hormonal health. But back then, when I was still teaching, it was called Finding Your Shine, and I co-hosted it with my best friend Liz. And we just talked about all aspects of health and wellness and women empowerment. So that was kind of like the start. But as I got into that world and I was having these incredible conversations with people, it like expanded my mind to things that I had never knew I could even get into. I was so passionate about this work that I got my certificate at the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, became a certified health coach. And I also went through their program, their advanced gut health course and their advanced hormone course. And now I coach women one-on-one And we have a 4-month program together where we focus on all aspects of hormonal healing. So nutrition, gut health, liver support, stress reduction. And I recently am Reiki 2 certified. So I'm a Reiki practitioner now.
Very
so I
cool.
incorporate a lot of energetic work and how that affects the body as well.
Very cool.
That is a really cool combination of skills. And I think that just goes once again to show how you've really incorporated a whole lifestyle factor into your work, where you're not just the nutrition person or you're not just the mental health person. You're making sure that they're covering all of their bases.
And I also want to point out too, like, I do respect the medical industry a lot, but I want listeners to really hear your story. You were a music teacher and you became a hormone expert. Like, you healed yourself and now you're helping other people. So this is what I like to call the nobodies helping the nobodies. And I say,
Yeah.
and that seems really like harsh, but in our culture, the somebodies are these doctors, right? These people with their PhDs and their MDs. And in our culture, we are designed and groomed to only respect their opinions. And so the beauty, I think, of this platform that we have is we're finding like-minded people like you, the person who is the nobody, talking to nobodies like us, because none of us have PhDs, and we're healing ourselves. We're healing our bodies, and we're empowering other people with that knowledge to do the same, and letting them know and believe that they can, that they don't need to spend thousands upon thousands of dollars trying to get the opinions of doctors' care, or the doctor's care, or holding them or hand holding them through that. Does that make sense?
Oh my gosh, I resonate with that 100%. And I always say the doctors are, experts in their field. Absolutely.
Yes.
And we need them for, emergency situations.
Totally.
If I'm in a car accident, like, please take me to
a
the
doctor. Yes.
Or if I, but they're not an expert on your body. And so where Western medicine, unfortunately, is failing is when it comes to chronic conditions, autoimmunity, women's health in general.
Exactly.
And most of the research that has ever been done on women's health has been based on men. So there's just so many, there's so many issues when it comes to, chronic conditions and autoimmunity in women's health. Yeah.
Well, and I feel like the research is really slow in this area, because only just now there are some more open-minded doctors that are recognizing environmental toxins are messing up with our hormones, but it's not being spoken about in the mainstream medical world. And so we're having to go to Dr. Google and look this up. You know what I mean? And I use that in a snarky sense because doctors are always mocking the Dr. Google, and it's like, well, you know what? That's actually a very empowering tool, because it's us connecting to other sources of information and finding out this really important stuff about our environment, about our bodies. And it's the platform that we leap off of from Google to understand, there are such things called xenotoxins.
Or in a lot of cases, DuckDuckGo instead, because they don't censor like Google does.
Yes. So if you're trying to research health issues, go to duckduckgo.com and they'll give you way more information. Because we've had that issue where we've tried to look up certain
a lot
articles.
Of the topics that we talk about, like vaccines, for instance, if you go and search on Google, it's not going to show you much other than what the official line is.
There was another topic that we were trying to look up where they actually kicked out doctors from Sierra Leone who were curing Ebola using ozone therapy. And I could not find that article on Google. But then as soon as I went to DuckDuckGo, but this is why that happened. Sorry, this is a little bit of a tangent, but because Big Pharma complained to the World Health Organization, and the World Health Organization forced the government of Sierra Leone to kick out those doctors. And so isn't that unbelievable? But you won't find that on Google.
This is our problem. Yeah. But this is the problem, is that Big Pharma is controlling so much. And, and I just, here's a side note as well, as we're going off on a tangent. Just recently, not even a month ago, I went to go see my gynecologist. And now I'm obviously very empowered in the things that I know now and advocating for my own health. But I've been struggling with some period pain still and back pain. And I really want to see if there's some endometriosis going on for me. And so I go in and I'm advocating for myself, telling her, I work with women's hormones all the time. This is what I do now. And she goes, I really think you need to stop Googling.
Oh
and I was
my
like,
gosh. What?
I'm not even joking.
No.
And that makes you feel, it really makes you feel dumb, you know? Like I'm not just Googling, like maybe I will Google, but I also have books from leading doctors in the women's health space. I've also taken courses on this. I'm not just Googling and just trying to be difficult for the sake of being difficult. I know that there are these things underneath the surface that we can start to get to the root of. And sometimes I feel like, you also just have to find the doctor that's willing to listen to you. But I've had that specifically happen to me.
Mm-hmm.
That's incredible and so infuriating.
And yet happens all the time. I probably have a new person weekly tell me that exact same story. And it needs to stop. Like this needs to stop. I don't want to say publicly shame our doctors, but we need to fire them. You know what I mean? We need to be like, I'm sorry, you're not an empowering doctor at all. Like we're done. You know, we need to start voicing like, so what did you say to that? I want to hear the rest of the story. Did you like give her like a full mouthful or were you like, okay, thanks, bye?
I think I said something along the lines of, well, I'm not just Googling and I actually research all of this, but at the same time, I feel like I've had these conversations on my own show. Mm-hmm. They know what they know and we know what we know. And
exactly.
And there's benefits to both, you know? And so I feel like sometimes there's no point in me arguing because my goal is I am empowered, like I said, and I know that I can go other routes. So I'm going to go to my gynecologist for what I'm going to go to her for. I'm going to get my pap smear. I'm going to go to get my internal ultrasound, you know?
Yes.
And I'm going to know that when I go to her telling her I'm having these issues, she's going to prescribe birth control or in my case, Oralisa, which is supposed to help with endometriosis pain. Yeah. I know that. But I also know what I can take in and what to listen to and what not to.
Yes.
So
I love that. I love that. And one thing that I just want to add to that is I love how you said there's no point in arguing because she knows what she knows. And we need to be okay with that and recognize that they don't know everything. But another thing I tell people, the most empowering thing you can do, because big pharma only speaks the language of money. So you take your money away from big pharma. That's the only way you fight against this machine. You don't yell at it. You don't throw stones at it. You just remove your money from it. And, you educate yourself and you take your business somewhere else.
And that is the other thing. You have to educate yourself. Right?
Yes.
And that's one of the big problems with Western medicine is that it has taken all of the power completely away from the people and it has concentrated all of the information with the power holders, which are the medical associations, the insurance companies, the doctors.
100%.
And so not only are we helpless when it comes to making decisions about our own health, but we're clueless. I mean, how many women out there really understand the ovulation cycle?
None.
I don't know it very well, but it also, I don't have it in my body. And I know so many women who know even less than I do about it.
Yep. So on that note, let's jump in to some of the nitty gritty and some stuff that people can start listening to and researching. I would love to talk about the menstrual cycle. I'd love to talk about gut health, liver health. Where should we start, Nina? Where do you think listeners, what do they need to listen to first?
Well, I would say if you are struggling with hormone imbalance or PMS or anything in general related to women's health, the first thing you need to do is you need to start listening to nutrition first, which we've already kind of covered.
Yes.
But our hormones are made by, quality protein, amino acids, and essential fatty acids. So making sure that you are eating the right types of protein for your body and getting in the right amounts of healthy fats is going to be huge. Of course, as everybody always says, leafy greens, getting in lots of fibrous vegetables, cruciferous veggies, starting to make those little changes are going to serve your body and your hormones so much more than anything else you can start with. And particularly, this is kind of my go-to thing with any of my clients that I start with. It starts with breakfast. So if you can just give your body the nutrients it needs to stabilize your blood sugar throughout the day, you're going to give yourself such a support. Exactly. But then, the next step is kind of removing things that are causing inflammation and are affecting the gut. Because when the gut needs healing, you're not going to be able to detox, a lot of times excess estrogen from the body.
Totally.
Or toxins from the body that are causing your hormone imbalance.
Exactly. I want to go off of, you mentioned increasing good proteins and fats. You guys, if you haven't listened to our fat podcast, please do, because a lot of the sex hormones and hormones in general need cholesterol. And what we know from the past 50 years of really bad information and research and marketing was that fat has been demonized for too long. And now we're in this massive health epidemic where everyone is sick. We need to romanticize fat again, and the healthy fats, you know, the saturated fats, especially. I mean, if you can do dairy, then do grass-fed butter or ghee or something like that. What do you have to say about that, Tris?
Yeah, no, I'm right on board with that. And I want to also hit on the second thing that Nina said about this, which is that we want to cut out stuff that's causing problems for us. Because what I see all the time on the blood chem analyses that I do is that people get their liver all in a tangle and the liver can't do its job very well. And that leads to these big excesses of estrogen that their bodies can't clear. And then they wonder why they've got this huge imbalance between their estrogens and their progesterones.
And I think one of the really important things is, you guys, sugar is so bad for your hormones. So bad. It's bad for your liver. It's bad for your hormones. Because remember, when you eat sugar, your body has to release insulin. And I think we forget that insulin is a hormone. And what is it that doctors put women on when they have PCOS? It's metformin.
Metformin, yeah.
You know, and it's to stabilize blood sugar.
What is metformin for people that aren't aware of that?
Oh, so when you are diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, it's to help get insulin into your cells. So it brings down your blood glucose levels. And so what they're basically doing is they're tricking people's bodies who have PCOS by bringing down their blood glucose levels and forcing sugar into the cells. And so we know that there is a massive correlation with too much sugar intake and PCOS. So what is the first thing you need to do? Well, not the first, because you need to heal your gut, eat more fats and proteins, but you need to cut out sugar drastically, you guys.
Or take metformin.
No, don't, because there's a whole bunch of...
There's so many. That's the problem. That's the problem with pharmaceuticals, is that once there's so many other side effects that go along with them. When, like you just mentioned, cutting out your sugar, it can get to the root of the problem. Of course, with eating the other things you need to do to stabilize your blood sugar. Yeah. But there's so much that we can do, but we're just not informed when we go to the doctor that there are these things. Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, and that's something we see a lot too. And it's kind of frustrating the way that the system has trained us all to think that there's a magic pill for every condition out there. Right. So we'll have people who they've had it with the medical system, they're done, but they come to us and they still want that same approach. And instead of saying, what's the medication? They say, well, yeah, what's the supplement? Just give me a couple of supplements and then we'll wait a few weeks and see if it works. Because that's how it works with the medication. And it's so hard to retrain people to have more realistic expectations.
And it's a lifestyle approach. It's not a substitute the med for the supplement. And I think that's really scary for a lot of people, completely redoing their baseline for nutrition and eating, because food is so emotional, right? So okay.
Nina, aside from sugar, what are some things that you would put on the absolute do not touch list when it comes to foods?
So can I preface by saying one thing? So the first thing that I really work with, have you guys heard of intuitive eating?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I try really, really hard when I'm working with my women, because of diet culture, to not put foods in black or white, or to not put them in the extremes and to demonize them, because I found that we have so much, brainwash from diet culture and everything, that we create these restriction mindsets that then further are the stress in our body and then cause us actually to fail when we do that. And so what I do is I like to really say we're crowding this out, because when we say crowding it out, then we bring in replacements and then we don't crave those things.
That's so clever.
We don't crave them anymore because we're actually giving our body what it needs on a biological level. But yeah, sugar, of course, is one of them. And then also when you're really struggling, alcohol, and I know this one's hard too, but coffee, caffeine, it can really, elevate inflammation and, aggravate premenstrual syndrome, which is something that I focus on highly. So those, and then inflammatory oils are huge, and those are hidden in everything. So it's like, we've heard like canola oil is the way to go. Well, it's not for your hormones. So looking into like inflammatory oils and making sure you're using coconut oil, avocado oil, olive oil, and watching the way that you're using your olive oil. That's kind of, I go to those things first, but how do we replace them with things,
And on that note, if you go to a restaurant, 99% of the time they're using those bad oils.
Yeah, they are.
If you go to a grocery store and you buy a prepared food, prepackaged food, or even something like chips and crackers, probably has one of those bad oils.
Well, what's also frustrating is like healthy snacks. They all have sunflower oil, like all of them. Yeah. And that's inflammatory. Just now I'm seeing seaweed because my kids love seaweed, but it's always with sunflower oil. Yeah. Just now I'm seeing seaweed with olive oil. And I'm like, yes, let me stock up on that. But again, like I don't, and again, we're now getting into like the details and the devil's in the details, but I don't know how much they've heated that olive oil. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, is it now rancid? How long has it been on the shelf? Yeah. So again, it's the devil's in the details, but it is something to look out for. It's going back to basics of making your own food, prepping your own food, so you know exactly where it's coming from. But if you are going to eat a lot of healthy snacks, just watch out for those seed oils, those nut oils, because they can wreak havoc on your body and aggravate inflammation. So.
And like I mentioned, I'm kind of going through some things right now with my own hormones, and I've noticed I have let that kind of slide a little bit. I'm getting, even if it's organic, like you guys, have you heard of Simple Mills? Like I love their Simple Mills, almond flour crackers, or other things. They're going out even to quote unquote, like organic restaurants and healthy restaurants. But there are a lot of things being thrown in there that even though they're labeled organic, doesn't mean that they're not inflammatory to the system. And so my big thing is, I want to feel better. So I might take a more strict protocol right now for my body because I need to. And, you also have to know it's okay to have those things once in a while. Your body is really resilient, but you'll start to notice when it becomes an unhealthy pattern for you again. Yeah.
And we always talk about the 80-20 rule, or in some cases, the 90-10 rule, which is that it's okay to have those things occasionally, as long as they are the exception to your normal routine, not a regular part of it. Right.
So for listeners out there, and Nina, maybe your recommendations are different, but what I try to tell people is, go for about 8 to 12 servings of vegetables a day. You know what I mean? Like you are not going to feel hungry eating 8 to 12 servings of vegetables. It's going to fill you up. It's going to be really satiating, getting lots of healthy fats. That too is going to be extremely satiating for you. And I had a mom come to me one day and she said, please, can you tell my daughter to stop eating sugar and that she's not allowed it? And I said, I'm not going to do that. But what I'm going to tell her is eat all your veggies and then have your cup of ice cream. You know what I mean? Like just get that goal in to nourish your body and get that nutrient dense food in there. And then over time, she's going to crave that ice cream less and less and less. And she's going to start craving the veggies more and more and more. You know what I mean? Yeah. But like you said earlier, when we go into that, no, you can't have the ice cream anymore. It's only vegetables. Not only that is the most depressing thought on the face of the planet, but it now becomes like the forbidden apple, right? And so we all have that rebellious child in us where we're like, I'm going to go and sneak that ice cream while no one's watching. You know what I mean? Like, so eat the healthy foods. Your gut biome will catch up. It'll start to force your body to crave that healthy food. I've never had a person who has gone on like a nutrition protocol like this, come back to me a month or two later and be like, I still hate vegetables. Like they're always saying, I crave vegetables. I can't wait for my vegetables. I can't wait for my green smoothie in the morning. And I love hearing that because the body adapts, the body craves these things and we don't even realize how depleted we are.
And when you do it from a whole foods perspective, that really does taste delicious because people are used to, you eat your vegetables with like nothing on them, but with a whole foods perspective, you can put some really delicious fats with those vegetables when you cook them and it tastes so good.
And then lots of salt.
I just had it this morning. I had like a bunch of leafy greens and some coconut oil and I put a little like garlic on it and I had eggs and sweet potato and I was like, I felt so satisfied and so good. I
haven't had breakfast yet and I am hungry now.
It's almost 12 o'clock for me here in Ohio. So I'm like rolling up on lunch. But you're right. Like adding in those servings of vegetables, like trying to get those fibrous vegetables in each meal and leafy greens, and then making sure, and the amount of protein you need is really, I think, varies on everybody. Like we know this bio-individuality with nutrition, but making sure you're getting good quality protein in. And then like I always try and get at least like 2 tablespoons of healthy fat or more in each of my meals.
Yes.
And that's what you need to do.
Exactly. And just to remind listeners, I say this all the time, fat doesn't make you fat. Sugar makes you fat. So
exactly. The 90s.
So I've got a question that I think is on a lot of people's minds. Nina, what are your thoughts on soy? Is that a problem when it comes to women's hormones?
There's a lot of conflicting research, I think, with soy. And I personally, if you're struggling with estrogen dominant symptoms, I mean, it's a I just forgot the term.
A phytoestrogen?
Phytoestrogen. Thank you.
No problem.
A phytoestrogen. So when you're consuming soy and you don't really know how it's going to react in the body, it can mimic your naturally occurring estrogen. And so especially if it's processed soy, we don't want to get near that at all. I know that some women can feel good if they're eating, for example, maybe edamame or fermented tempeh in like the first half of their cycle when their estrogen is rising anyway. It can kind of support that. But if you're struggling with estrogen dominance in the luteal phase, the second half of your cycle, I really would encourage you not to play around with soy, and especially like soy milk or tofu. It's so processed. Your body doesn't know what to do with that.
So processed. So keep to the edamame if you're not estrogen dominant. What do you think about like kids and men eating soy? Like if it's edamame, non-processed? I
have not, again, done much research as far as the men's body goes when it comes to that, but I would think it would be okay if you're eating these whole versions of soy that are not processed.
And it's always within moderation,
processed.
Right? Like if you're eating soy for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, if you're having it like once or twice a week, like it's not that big of a deal.
Again, depending on your particular body, right?
Exactly.
And that actually brings me to a question. And if this is going to take us way off track, you can just say no, Tristan. But how do women know if they're estrogen dominant?
Yes. I'd love to.
So there are a lot of symptoms that are correlated with estrogen dominance. So if you're struggling with heavy periods, long-lasting periods, menstrual cramps, mood swings before your period, that all can, be contributed to estrogen dominance. Menstrual headaches have a lot to do with estrogen dominance. But then you can go ahead and you can get your levels checked too. If you don't want to just kind of guess, you can get a saliva test or the Dutch test, which is one of the most comprehensive. It's a dried urine test. So it will actually tell you what your level of estrogen is and then where and how your body is metabolizing your estrogen, which is pretty fantastic information.
So is that your preferred test, the Dutch test?
Yeah, it's fantastic. I was just looking at a client's, and it really tells you, because we have these different pathways that our estrogen can go down. And one, makes things grow. So if your estrogen is going down, the 16 pathway, you're more predisposed to perhaps breast cancer or fibroids. But if your estrogen is going down the 2 pathway, which is the pathway we want it to go down, then that's okay. But you don't really know that unless you're testing. Then we also kind of know if you're actually metabolizing your estrogen and effectively, which is something else that the Dutch test tells you.
That's really cool. I'm assuming things that encourage that 16th pathway metabolism is inflammatory foods, sugar, all that kind of stuff, because sugar has IGF and all of that stuff that it just enhances cancer growth, cystic growth, all that kind of stuff. Okay. I would love to talk about birth control and alternatives to that. Can we go down that rabbit hole? Because one of my most popular stories on Instagram is when I'm talking about oral birth control, how oral hormone just messes up your gut biome. But not only that, they were a few years ago, excuse me, I was researching hyperbaric oxygen therapy for cancer. And I came across this cancer summit where some researchers were presenting on birth control and the links to cancer and how no one is talking about it. Can we talk about it?
Yeah, let's talk about it. Where do we want to start?
From the beginning, why are our doctors not giving us like informed consent of the side effects of it? Like, is it because they just don't know? And please educate our listeners about the risks of birth control.
Yeah. Well, going back to what our doctors learn, how they go through medical training, they learn that the birth control pill is the solution for any of the things that we're struggling with when it comes to women's health, most of them. So a part of me says, I can't fault them for that because that's their education, and it will quote unquote work to mask the symptoms. So women can feel better, but there's also 50% plus women that feel absolutely worse when they're on birth control. So when you go in, that's the solution that they're giving you. But they are not informing us of all of the small little intricacies of what can happen when our body's actually taking birth control. I mean, they'll say things like, if you have blood clotting in your family, then you might not want to be on the combination pill because of the estrogen. Like they will say big things like that. But when it comes to depression or weight gain or, just the fact that some women never get their period back after they get off the pill, they're not saying these things to us. Right. So I think it's really up to us in the work that we're doing to share these things.
Yeah. Okay.
So go ahead.
No, I was going to say, okay. And so what are some of the risks that people should be aware of?
So when you're taking the pill, what essentially is happening, and it kind of depends on which pill you're on. So if you're on the combination pill, which is synthetic estrogen and synthetic progesterone called progestin, you're shutting off the communication between your brain and your ovaries. So you don't ovulate. And this, of course, causes a lot of problems because women are used to going through these 4 phases weekly within their menstrual cycle. So that means estrogen rising, ovulation, estrogen peaking, progesterone then taking over, and then, of course, menstruation. And so when we have this natural flow and this beautiful dance of our hormones going on every single month, it supports our mood. It supports, of course, the hormones that we need for pregnancy. If that's something we're looking forward to down the line. Of course, birth control, as we know, affects the gut microbiome. So there's just all of these things that taking the pill kind of just stops and prevents. And we need our naturally cycling hormones to feel well. It stabilizes our weight. Again, it stabilizes our mood. It allows us to have a period and release toxins. And when we're taking the birth control, I kind of touched on it a bit, but it affects our gut microbiome, which, as we all know, then contributes to a host of other functions in the body. So
like autoimmune issues, inflammatory issues, all that kind of stuff.
The way we absorb our food, our serotonin levels, so many things.
Well, and does taking the pill put you in more of an estrogen dominant state?
So when you're taking the pill, it kind of puts you on a man cycle, to be honest. So you're getting like a low, steady dose of these synthetic hormones on a 24-hour schedule. So I don't necessarily think it puts you in a more estrogen dominant state, although when you get off the pill, it can definitely contribute to that. But you're just getting this low and steady dose of synthetic hormones every single day. There is also the progestin only pill, the mini pill. So there's no estrogen in that. And some women do actually ovulate, but the problem with that is you're not getting your natural progesterone, which helps us to feel calm and grounded and helps with mood stabilization and all of that. So,
right. Okay. And so what are some alternatives to birth control for women?
I really like to teach women about the fertility awareness method, which is how to track your cycle, what to look for, how to know when ovulation is about to happen, taking your temp every morning, looking at cervical mucus, which I know sounds kind of gross, but it's a necessity. So natural family planning and the fertility awareness method, of course, you can use a condom or a diaphragm or something like that if that's your choice as well. But those are really the areas that I preach. And I personally practice FAM myself. And, I might be thinking about having a child soon, but I haven't been pregnant. I've been with my husband for 10 years now. So it works.
Yay.
Nina, does Does the fertility awareness method require you to have a pretty consistent period though? Because we do work with a lot of women who their periods are all over the place. Would that method be problematic for them?
So if you're taking your temperature every morning, we're then able to see if you're ovulating. So that's kind of the first thing. And it can be difficult. I would say if you have a cycle that's a little bit all over the place, I would suggest that you actually work with a fertility awareness educator because they can really help you look into the nitty gritty of things. But when you're taking your temperature, you're able to see, okay, my temp has now spiked past my baseline. So I can confirm that I have ovulated. So now I know that I'm safe to have unprotected sex post ovulation because obviously there's no egg that's going to be floating around in there anytime soon until after your period. So you can kind of confirm that way. And then you can you have to really get used to tracking your cervical mucus so that you can see if you're fertile, if you're in that fertile window. So no matter where you are in your cycle, those are some signs that you can definitely look at. But I would say it does make it a little bit more difficult. Yeah.
Okay. Can we talk a little bit about, I know we brushed on liver health, but can you explain to listeners why is liver health so important? And, because what I want to just say really fast is we live in a society where we just eat sugar for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And that is so hard on our livers, especially the amount of fructose. I mean, we drink tons of soda or sugary coffee or something like that. And that's hard on our livers. What is it about the liver that is so important for women's hormones? Other than metabolizing estrogen, what else does it do?
So our liver obviously helps us to package up the toxins that our gut is later then going to eliminate for us. So when we are, again, like you mentioned, eating a lot of sugar or again, putting like toxins on our body, skincare, burning candles that have a lot of toxins in them, our liver has to process all of that. And so what it's doing is it's working so hard just to package up and process the toxins from our food and then from all of these products and things that we're using, even toxins in our water, everything, that it takes over. And then our estrogen kind of gets left behind and recirculates in the bloodstream.
Right.
So it's important to make sure that you're doing things to support your liver health, like, of course, eating proper nutrition, getting in good like antioxidants that support the liver, like berries. You can even supplement if you want with like N-acetylcysteine or glutathione, but focusing on things that support your liver and then eliminating products and things that are going to tax your liver as well. So that way it has more time to do what it needs to do to help with our estrogen and our hormone levels to make sure that we're getting those out of the body.
I love that.
Nina, are you a fan of doing the liver cleanses and things like that to speed up that process?
So I do. I mean, obviously our body is a natural detoxifier and it does this for us every day, but I think it can be really helpful, especially if you consider doing like a liver boosting salad, or there's some smoothies and drinks that you can do that give your body the antioxidants and the foods and the nutrients it needs. I don't think like a specific detox is always necessary, but when it comes to focusing on, if you're getting in those foods through a smoothie or a drink or a salad or, a liver food protocol for a little bit, that's beautiful. I think people confuse that sort of detox with like just a juice detox that they don't really need, if that makes sense.
That
Perfect
makes
sense.
a lot of sense. Yeah, thank you.
Can we talk about xenoestrogens? We spoke about this in our last hormones episode, but what I mentioned then was like, we're seeing these young girls starting their periods like as early as 8 years old. The majority of, I think, young girls is between 12 and 14, which is still really young. It really should be more around the age of 14. But the reason why we're seeing this is because, and what I explained, and maybe you can add to it, is, from babies, we are heating up milk in plastic bottles. We're eating out of plastic. We're heating plastic. Like you said, we're putting perfumes on our bodies, which are endocrine disruptors. They mimic hormone. They block certain pathways that allow for metabolism to happen. Not only that, but you mentioned the water, like the colorants that we have in food, the candles, the the hair product, our makeup. I mean, I think of
so many
things. Like I just think of how my daughter, I bought some makeup for my son's Halloween costume last year. And it's like hidden in the corner of my bathroom, untouched, except when she finds it and then she puts it all over her body. You know what I mean?
You're like, no.
Right. Yeah. You know, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, it's all like these perfumes and these colorants and stuff. But like, can you add to that and like explain to us why we are having this epidemic? You know, like, is there something more to it, or is it just everything is chemicals and we need to just decrease our exposure to them?
I think that you kind of hit the nail on the head. And there's so many endocrine disruptors everywhere. I mean, you just listed off like plastics, our food, like even again, if we go to Whole Foods, we're buying something, it's probably in plastic, you know,
yes.
or we have the our cans are lined in, I can't even remember what it's called, which they're not BPA free, but, you know, they're everywhere. And the thing is, we don't want to walk around being afraid of everything because let's be real. We walk outside and there's pollutants in the air, and we go to the mall and we're breathing in endocrine disrupting fragrances everywhere we turn.
Right.
So the only thing we can do is we can control what we purchase and what we put into our own bodies. So choosing glass Tupperware, making sure that especially if you have a daughter that's, you know, getting ready to use makeup, go and educate her on clean beauty products. Yeah. Make sure that your home and your shower and your cleaning products, we didn't even talk about, you know, the spray that you put on your counters or the laundry detergent that you use every single week.
Yep.
Right. Like, you can control what you bring into your own home. And I also, and pans, that's another thing. You know, our pans that are lined with like non-stick chemicals, that's an endocrine disruptor as well. So yeah, it's like looking into what you can do to make sure that you have a clean home, and also that kind of rubs off on the people around you. And you can bring your glass bottles and containers everywhere you go if you need to. But that's the first thing, because then you're supporting your liver so that it can do what it needs to do. And I think that's really all we can do when it comes to that, is just trying to do our best to buy the products that are best for us. Yeah.
And I love, go ahead, Tris.
Well, and like you said, not worrying too much about it, right? That's the great paradox, is that we're supposed to make these drastic life changes, but we also can't get too stressed because that causes tons of problems on its own. So it's a tricky line to walk
This is what I recommend to people is, as soon as you use up all of your, you know, fragrant lotion, then replace it with a healthier one. As soon as you use up your because you've been using it for years, like what's another few weeks going to be, right? I mean, unless you are everything's burning down, then get rid of it completely. But just make these slow changes, like use it up and then replace with something better and cleaner. You know, a few things that I would highly recommend for listeners right now, if you do want homework, is all your cleaning products and your laundry dryer sheets. Throw those out today, because those are extremely toxic. So
they're a cheap replacement.
So yes, there's so many cheap replacements, like vinegar and water, you guys. There is the company that we love called Branch Basics and Force of Nature, which is fantastic and clean. But again, just use like vinegar, white vinegar and water for your dryer sheets. Like throw those out today. Don't ever use them ever again. Don't even give them to your neighbor, because you don't want to poison them. But those are highly carcinogenic. What you can do is just buy some like cotton dryer balls and take essential oils and put about like 5 to 10 drops on those dryer balls and throw it in, and your whole house smells like aromatherapy oils, and it's fantastic. And so that's what I tell people is, you know, those are the big ones. Get rid of those. But like, if like lotions, use up and then get clean ones. I don't know. What would you add to that? What do you guys think is super important that people should be wary of?
You know, I just want to add one thing too, when it comes to, if we're eliminating all of these products, a couple other simple things you can do just to support yourself. This sounds silly, but just drink more water and then make sure you're getting enough sleep, because those two things are also going to help your body detox. And those are two things that you also have control over, right?
Exactly.
So like going to bed and making sure you're getting enough sleep, because that's when your body cleans out your system.
Exactly.
Waking up and having a glass of room temperature water. As you're crowding out all the products, bring in those two things and just help your body and its detoxification process.
I love it. Oh, one other thing I do want to add is women, our tampons, what are we putting in ourselves? Do they have fragrances? Please get rid of them. Like,
Okay, wait.
get organic cotton.
I've got a question on tampons. I've heard from people before that there is no such thing as a healthy tampon, that even an organic cotton one is still problematic for women.
I would say it's way better than anything else.
I agree.
So I actually use the cup, the silicone cup,
The Diva cup.
I use the Diva cup, and then for me personally, like tampons make me cramp, so I hate them, and so I'll use the Diva cup, and I'll just use the organic cotton pads for like panty liners.
I have to admit, I haven't used the menstrual cup yet, and I need to. I'm always promoting women, like, use the menstrual cup. It's good for the environment. It also is obviously toxin-free silicone. So, but I haven't done it myself. I don't know why. I think I'm just nervous because of the change, but you're right. Even organic cotton has some stuff in there. Sometimes it has bleach in there still, which is
serious?
Kind of mind-blowing.
Oh
Yeah, you have to look. But I use, and again, I haven't done a whole host of research on it, but I use Lola and Cora.
Okay.
And I think somebody told me once that Lola had some stuff in it. But again, it's how much better than going and using,
than the other like Tampaxes,
the conventional brand
that smells like perfumes. And your uterus has so many blood vessels, you guys, like it absorbs everything. So be careful what you put up there because it's not good. Yeah. Okay. I do want to talk about the Diva cup. It's kind of like going on a first blind date. You just have to like get through it. Do you know what I mean? Like it's a little bit more explorative than I would prefer, but like once you get it and you just have to play around with it for a little bit. And then, sorry, men who are listening right now.
No, don't be sorry.
Okay.
Actually, don't be. I need to go on a soapbox for a second. We need to stop stigmatizing women's bodies.
I know that's true.
And this is probably the single most important area where this can happen because we have not only trained men that it's none of their business and they should be disgusted to even hear that it exists, but we've trained women that they shouldn't be talking about it.
That's so true.
Their bodies are nobody else's business when it comes to the gross stuff.
It's so true.
But their bodies are everybody's business when it comes to the stuff.
It's so true.
So
isn't it crazy that? Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. No, go.
I was going to say, isn't it crazy that I'm in this line of work and so are you, and I even apologize for saying cervical mucus. I was like, I know that can be kind of gross.
Right.
But you're right. It's years, it's centuries of women being afraid and stigmatized talking about their periods. Yeah.
Totally.
And it's absolutely terrible because it prevents women from learning about their bodies the way that they need to.
It's so true.
Women are afraid to talk to their own daughters about their daughters' bodies. And so the daughters are learning it from the internet, from their friends, from their doctors, heaven forbid. And they're never getting a true understanding of it. And much less are they really appreciating it and seeing the beauty in the whole thing.
It's so true. So kind of back to what I was saying though, is I unapologize. Yes. So let's talk about this. When you do start using the Diva cup, it's a little messy. So that's the only thing I just want to warn people, like it's messy. You probably don't want to play around with it in a public bathroom. Like if you're going to utilize it, like make sure you're at home or in a safe environment, like at work where you feel comfortable, like you're right next to a sink so that when you're pulling it out, you can wash your hands and wash the cup and so on and so forth. Because when you're in a public stall, you're not next to a sink. So I just want people to just, if you are going to play around with it and you're going to try and utilize it, I really love it. I hardly ever cramp on it. Every time I put a tampon in, I cramp. And so, but these Diva cups, I don't like, I've only cramped probably twice and I've used it for like the past 5 months. You know, so
well, and for somebody that's dealing with pain like me, I know that if I was my own coach, I would be telling myself to try the Diva cup.
Right?
There's a quiz out there. I don't know if you know the name of it. I linked it actually to a few of my clients, but you can take this quiz to figure out which one is right for you and the size and the brand. I'm really sorry. I can't think of the name of it right now, but I bet if you type in menstrual cup quiz in Google, going back to Dr. Google, you'll find it.
I think I found it. I putacupinit.com /quiz.
There we go.
Quiz.
And we'll put it in the show notes, you guys.
Put a cup in it.
So check put a cup in it. That's fantastic. Nina, anything else that listeners need to know about their sex hormones and all of that?
I think the main thing I would like to tell anybody that's listening is your body, we touched on it a little bit, it goes through this beautiful hormonal dance every single month. And we want our natural hormones rising and falling to support our body and to support our health and to support our fertility, our mental and physical health in so many different areas. And so if you are just kind of diving into this, know that if you are on birth control, your body isn't getting that beautiful dance of hormones every single month. And if you're not on birth control and you're having a lot of symptoms of hormone imbalance, know that it's possible to get that fluctuation back by doing a lot of the things we discussed in this conversation. But also, you know, I really like talking about the cycle syncing method. There's a lot of foods you can eat for each week of your cycle, honoring what your mental health and your physical health needs in each week of your menstrual cycle, and supporting your body that way is going to really jumpstart your hormonal healing.
That's really cool. I love the idea that you can support yourself through all 4 phases. And that, do you do like a course, or can you work with people remotely?
Yeah. So right now I just am doing one-on-one. So I see people in person in Columbus and also over Zoom. So we can do it that way. Cool. But I'm working on a course right now that is launching in January, and it'll have all of my tools, pretty much my 4-month program, all packaged online for people to purchase that way.
Very cool. I love that. Okay. And how can people find you?
Very active on Instagram. So at Nourished with Nina, as well as my podcast, Healing Hormones. You can also find a lot of good stuff on my website, which is just nourishedwithnina.com.
Perfect. And before we close up, I just want to end on a note. Nina, you've been mentioning this throughout the podcast, is the importance of stress. And I just want to explain to listeners again what happens when we are stressed. And it's why we need to prioritize that. And I really want to thank you for bringing that to light, because oftentimes I completely brush over that because I'm actually a very highly anxious person. But what happens is when you're stressed, you have these organs that sit on top of your kidneys called the adrenals, and they produce like cortisol and epinephrine and norepinephrine, but then they also produce DHEA. And DHEA is a precursor to a lot of your sex hormones, you guys. Now cortisol, which is also produced by those adrenals, that's your stress hormone. And when you are highly stressed, your adrenals are going to hijack that DHEA, which is the precursor to your sex hormones. It's going to steal it and convert it to cortisol to support your stress response. So when you are stressed, you are literally hijacking from your sex hormones. You are literally hijacking them. So
cortisol and progesterone are like tied, you know, so the more cortisol you have, the less progesterone, which is what's causing so much of these estrogen dominant symptoms, because it's a ratio. You may not actually have elevated estrogen levels. They might be normal estrogen levels, but your progesterone is so low, tied a lot of times to stress. Also, sorry to butt in, but just women that are in menopausal age, their adrenals are then what are going to be producing their hormones. And so it's really important to prioritize stress and adrenal health, especially if you're menopausal age. Yeah.
Oh man. And we didn't even go into menopause. We're going to have to do another
episode sometime. I know. And we'll have to talk about like supporting each phase of the cycle and food. Nina, thank you so much for your time. Any parting words before we close out? Because this has been so informative, and I think listeners are going to love this. Love it, love it, love it. So any other parting words of wisdom?
No, not really. I just would say to all the women listening and men, just be an advocate for your own health and realize that you are the expert on your own body. And if there's something going on, really push for yourself. There are resources out there that you guys, coaches, holistic doctors, functional medicine doctors, there are resources out there for you to find your help.
Yes. Thank you.
Love it.
Love it. Thank you, Nina. And to all you listeners, thank you for listening. Please leave us a comment or review. We love that. That helps other people find us. Thank you for always sharing your the podcast with your friends, you guys. Like, we really appreciate your support and your love and the feedback that we get. You know how to find Nina. It's at Nourished with Nina, correct?
Yeah.
On Instagram. Okay. She's really active on there. So seek her out and bask in all of her wisdom, because she has a lot of it. Thank you again, Nina. And we will talk to you listeners next week.
See ya.